Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to today's Wild Rift video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at my tier list for patch 3.3b. We're going to go over every single role, every single champion, and I'll let you know my thoughts of every champion and why I've put them in certain tiers. This is on Wild Rift Fire, which is a website that I run. You got tier lists for champions, you got tier lists for runes. You also have champion builds for every single champion, including the two new champions, Samira and Sion, that will be coming out tonight. So make sure you keep an eye out for that one. I will be doing videos for them tonight as well, so keep a close eye on that one. So yeah, make sure you subscribe for more Wild Rift content, like the video, and let me know down in the comments what you think of the tier lists. All right, first things first is the Baron lane. A lot of S+ tier champions. I think the Baron lane is in a pretty decent spot at the moment. There are a lot of champions that can carry very well. There's a lot of good champions in the early game, in the mid game, and also the late game. One champion I want to talk about first, which is what I've changed and moved up into S+ tier, is Jax. Jax, I think I underrated a little bit. I know there was a few people in a few of my tier lists saying like Jax is broken, you know, Jax is definitely S+ tier. I think I can agree now. I think I can agree that Jax is S+ tier. I just felt that during the laning phase, Jax still struggles a little bit, but after watching some pro games and after playing some Jax myself, I realized that Jax is actually not that difficult during the laning phase. It's actually not that hard to just farm up, to just play safe, and even win out some trades as well, and then you'll be able to scale infinitely into the mid and late game. And that's really where Jax shines, you know, mid and late game Jax, Divine Sunderer, Blade Rune King, Death Stance, Hullbreaker. He's basically unkillable when it comes to mid and late game, and he's one of them champions that can 1v9, so a really strong champion to definitely give a try, and honestly quite easy to play as well. Wukong is still really strong. Wukong is still a champion that heals quite a lot with Grasping Undying, with Divine Sunderer. Really important during team fights. He has multiple ways that he can knock up as well with his ultimate. He can use his clone, his second ability, to basically knock up in two separate locations. You can knock up twice as well with your ultimate. Really strong, really good during the lane phase as well. He's really easy to play. He's very safe to play as well in the laning phase, because you're able to use your clone to get away to safety. You can use your dash as well. Like I said, your first ability heals for a lot, and it also does a lot of damage because it can also proc from Grasping Undying. So very cool champion to play. Like I said, mainly effective during team fights. You don't really want to split push with Wukong. But as soon as that first dragon comes up, as soon as you get Divine Sunderer, that's where Wukong can shine. Go into the dragon team fight, win that 5 versus 5 team fight, and then you'll be able to group with the rest of your team and be a huge impact. Garen, still super easy to play. I was gonna say really fun. He's not really fun at times. He just runs towards enemy champions. You silence them, you spin to win, you use your ultimate to do a bunch of damage, boom, and you kill them. Garen is quite disgusting. He's a very tanky champion as well. You can build him tank and it will still do a lot of damage. Quite easy to play during laning phase as well. Not really much going for Garen during laning phase. You just farm up, you spin to win, you max your third ability, you just keep spinning, you keep pushing a wave, you keep roaming around the map. And like I said, that silence is really effective on top of his ultimate that deals a lot of damage, a lot of execute damage. Speaking of execute damage, Darius as well, he gets his resets with his ultimate. He can win the team fight. That's basically what Darius's main goal is. You go into a team fight, you can get a 3 or 4 man apprehend, the pull, the third ability. You can get resets on your ultimate, do a lot of damage. Really good. And also you got a lot of healing as well from the first ability, and also Conqueror is still really good on him. Riven as well is still really strong. She has a lot of mobility. She has a lot of ways to get into the back line. She's really good at flanking as well, because she can get into areas that maybe the enemy teams might not realize, because she can jump over walls. She can go for these crazy flanks, and she can use her ultimate, use her mobility to get easily onto the back line. If you have an immobile carry like or if you're against or in a mobile carry like a Varus or a Lux, she can easily get onto the back line, and she's really strong. Definitely recommend to play her. Again, really safe during the laning phase as well. All of these champions are just really safe to play. You know, it's more about trying to outplay your opponent during the laning phase, because all these champions, you know, Wukong has a lot of healing, Garen's very tanky, Riven has a lot of mobility, same with Camille, same with Renekton as well. It's just trying to figure out the, you know, the right matchups and making sure that you don't misplay at all during the laning phase, because in the laning phase, if you do misplay and if you do die, then Wild Rift has kind of changed ever so slightly, so you're going to be put even further behind, which makes it even difficult. But as long as you're even, then you'll be completely fine. Renekton, more of an early game champion, Probably one of the strongest early game champions in the Baron lane. Really good at just dashing forward, using the Fury stacks to get the stun on enemy champions, to deal a lot of damage. You can build Renekton with Kraken Slayer, but most of the time I still like Conqueror, just because Conqueror stacks pretty much very easily on the ultimate, not the ultimate, on the second ability of Renekton, the empowered version where it strikes 3 times. And also you got, you got your ultimate that deals damage around the area. You got your first ability that does a lot of damage. You got 2 dashes on your third ability. So even though Kraken Slayer can work, Conqueror is still really good. But yeah, really good during the laning phase. Probably one of the strongest champions during the laning phase, and he's still really good when it comes to team fights as well. Blade Warrior King and also Black Cleaver. You jump onto the enemy backline, you use your second ability to stun them, and then you can do a lot of damage to them. Most of the time, you could do half the damage with just your second ability with your stun. Still really strong champion. Camille as well. Camille's still Camille, even after nerfs, after nerfs. This champion is still really strong. She scales better now into late game. She's not as strong during the laning phase now because she doesn't deal as much true damage, but once she scales into mid and late game, she gets 100% true damage on her first ability. She has her ultimate as well that can lock down one enemy champion and knock all the rest away. She's just really good during team fights, really good at split pushing, just all around a great champion to pick up. Moving down to the S tier. Now, honestly, there are some S tier champions here that could definitely move up to the S plus tier. And one champion that I think could move up to the S plus tier, I probably have to play a few games on him, but I did play a few games, is Gragas. Gragas with Grasping Undying with this Rod of Ages Iceborne Gauntlet build, this tank Gragas build, has been coming up quite quickly, and it's been really strong. You can still play AP Gragas in the top lane if you want to, but this tank Gragas is quite strong. It's really good. You get Rod of Ages. You can even go for like Sunfire into Iceborne Gauntlet if you feel like you don't really need Rod of Ages. But Grasping Undying works really well on him. He also got the crazy AP ratios as well. So even though you're only going to be building a little bit of AP with Rod of Ages, the AP percentage buff on the second ability and on the third ability was a huge buff for him. And also his passive healing is now more % of your maximum health. So the more health you get, the stronger Gragas will become with his passive, with his healing. But yeah, really safe during laning phase. Another champion that's really safe during laning phase. You can heal up quite a lot. You can farm at range if you want to with your first ability. And when it comes to the team fights, it's all about your ultimate. It's all about your explosive cast. Sometimes you can use your explosive cast to kind of imp your team in a way, but sometimes the explosive cast can be the game changer, can win or lose you a game. So make sure you practice the explosive cast, the ultimate. Main important thing is to try and split up the enemy team. You want to split up an enemy team, you want to isolate a target, and then the whole of your team can follow up and kill that one target. That's the main purpose you want to do with your ultimate. Most of the time you want to manually use your ultimate as well, not just autocast it. Set as well. Set is still quite good. Not as strong in my opinion as the other S plus tier champions. I think he probably could be up there in the S plus tier again. He's a champion that is, I don't know, Set's a weird one. Set is a very weird one. I mean, his true damage is quite insane from his second ability, but sometimes it's really difficult to deal the true damage, especially when you're against pretty decent opponents. I think in lower elos, Set could be really strong because people might not understand, or players might not understand, the true damage on the second ability, meaning that most of the time when the second ability happens, you need to move side to side with Set to make sure you only get dealt physical damage. But if you stay in the middle, then it's going to be true damage, and that can be quite a lot, especially when Set takes a lot of damage. But he's still really strong. He can still be really impactful during team fights if he uses his ultimate. Most of the time you can use your ultimate as like a disengage tool. If you're against like a Rakan or something, you could just use the ultimate to ultimate Rakan away and then try and survive. But again, that can be quite difficult because that can put yourself in a difficult position, which is sometimes what what happens with Set. Sometimes you can get put in this difficult situation if you use your ultimate at the wrong time or on the wrong enemy champion. But I still think he's still really strong. He does a lot of damage. He sustains really well. He's still pretty good. Jace, I think, is a little bit of a difficult one because Jace got kind of nerfed a little bit with Hullbreaker. I'm not too sure if Jace is as strong as what he used to be with Hullbreaker now. Hullbreaker Jace was completely broken. He was really really strong. But now that, there's some players that are building Hullbreaker. There's some players that are completely skipping out Hullbreaker now, are going like Black Cleaver, Ghost Blade, Serrader's Grudge, items like this. which still makes Jace really strong. You know, Jace is still a strong champion overall, but Hullbreaker was what made him, you know, S+ tier, what made him really, really strong. He still gets a full effect of Hullbreaker from the melee form, but the range form he doesn't get a full effect, but he still does a lot of poke damage. He's still really, really strong during the laning phase because he's a ranged champion. And against all these melee champions, you can look to zone the enemy champions, poke them down as well, and then use your melee form to jump in and deal a lot of damage. But again, like I said, he's just not as strong as what he was with Hullbreaker. Shen is pretty much the only full-on tank that we have really up in the S+ and S tier. You know, you have some other tanky champions, you know, Gragas and Garen, but they kind of build off tank where you build damage with tank, but Shen is kind of like only tank. Sometimes you build Divine Sunderer. I don't really like it on Shen personally. If you're against Divine Sunderer, it can be pretty good because it kind of negates both the Divine Sunderers, because you can heal basically off of each other and do the same damage to each other depending on the maximum health you have. But I think Shen full tank is really, really strong. Again, another safe champion to play during laning phase. You know, this is pretty much all of them. You can dash away, you can taunt away if you want to. You got your first ability to gain a shield, you got your second ability that can dodge all the basic attacks, and your ultimate as well. You know, Shen is great at split pushing. He wants to split push, he wants to go into a side lane and then use his ultimate to get into a team fight, give one of your allies a huge massive shield. But make sure you keep an eye on that. You need to make sure you keep an eye on the rest of your map to make sure you use your ultimate wisely. So yeah, Shen's still really strong. I've spoken about Gragas already. Fiora's moved down to S tier, but to be honest, another champion that could potentially move up into S+ tier as well. Fiora is one of them champions that is very difficult to play with Irelia as well. You know, both Fiora and Irelia are very, very difficult to play because Fiora, you have to make sure you get the vital stacks. You make sure you have to use your second ability at the perfect time, and that can sometimes be very difficult. But when you use your Fiora, the Fiora second ability at the perfect time, you can stun the enemy champion in front of you or to the side of you, wherever you use your second ability, and then you can look to capitalize on that. You can look to dash forward and try and do a lot of damage. But sometimes you can go a little bit too far with Fiora, which is kind of the same with Irelia as well. You know, like I said, both these champions are very difficult to play, which is why I moved Fiora down a little bit. I don't think she's as easy to play as the champions above, and I don't feel like she's as strong as the champions above. Same with Irelia as well. You know, quite a difficult champion to play. Again, she's very strong. Same as Fiora, she's also very strong. But again, just quite difficult to play. You have to make sure you get the resets on her passive. You have to make sure you dash in. But again, she does a lot of damage. She's great during team fights. If you can get the reset on your dashes, you can look to dash in, dash back out again, stack up her passive as well, which gives her a lot of attack speed. Insanely strong. Kennen is the champion that I have played. I will be bringing out a video on him very, very soon. Kennen's a champion that has definitely risen in popularity quite a lot. And the reason why Kennen's risen in popularity is not because he's been buffed. He hasn't been buffed at all, but because of nerfed other champions. You know, all these champions are getting nerfed. All these runes are getting nerfed. And that allows Kennen to start rising. You know, Electrocute keeps getting buffed. Kennen as a champion is still really good, especially during team fights as well. Even during the laning phase, Kennen is really, really good. I was very surprised at how strong Kennen was with Electrocute during laning phase. You know, you can harass enemy champions, you can do a lot of damage, and then you can use that advantage, what you got from the laning phase, and then rotate to the team fights. Use the Slicing Maelstrom, the ultimate, to get into team fights. Use that big, massive AoE damage. You can stun champions as well. And I use ultimate shield as well with Kennen, which is quite good. So I think Kennen is very strong, and he is definitely rising up in popularity. But again, I think the problem with Kennen is that he's very squishy. Exhaust is a big thing against Kennen as well, because it means that Kennen can't really do too much when Kennen jumps into a team fight, uses Slicing Maelstrom. If he gets exhausted, then he becomes pretty much useless. So you have to keep your eye out on exhaust for that one. Olaf, I think, is better in the jungle, but still can be played in the Baron lane as well. Does a lot of damage, heals quite a lot as well, and is okay during the Baron. And he's okay during the Baron lane. I think the AoE damage from the third ability is a big reason why Olaf is really strong during lane phase. You can push the lane very quickly. You can do a lot of damage to enemy champions. You can also heal a lot as well with the second ability. And you gain extra attack speed when you drop low on health. So if you are low on health, if you are trading against enemy champions, keep fighting with Olaf, because you're going to be healing a lot with the second ability. You're going to be doing true damage with your third ability. And most of the time, you will win early game trades in the laner phase against pretty much all the champions above, depending on obviously the situation and what happens. But Olaf's still pretty good in the Baron lane. Graves has kind of fallen out a little bit, just because Hullbreaker Graves was really strong before, but Hullbreaker Graves basically doesn't work now. That was the reason why Graves Baron Lane was starting to come up again. Back in season 1 and season 2, Graves was very strong. Leon, which is a player from Rix, was playing Graves Baron Lane, and it was really, really strong. But that was kind of when, you know, these champions weren't out. You know, the likes of Jace, the likes of, you know, Set as well. All these champions weren't really released, and Graves was kind of the one Baron Laner that was really, really strong. But then he kind of fell out. Then he kind of came back again with Hullbreaker, and then he's kind of fallen out again. I think as a ranged champion, Graves can do very well during the laning phase, but there's a lot of dashes in this game that you can easily jump onto Graves. You know, Wukong has a dash, Riven has dashes, Renekton has dashes, Jax, Camille. Most of the time with Graves in the Baron lane, you want to be against a champion that doesn't have any dashes, which means you can pretty much abuse your range form of Graves. You can keep poking down the enemy champion, keep farming at range, and you can use that advantage. But if you're against any you know, any champions that have any dashes that can dash on top of Graves, that's really where the struggle comes in for Graves. But I still think he's a fairly good champion. Malphite again as well. You know, Malphite with Iceborne Gauntlet, with Sunfire Cape. I do want to play a game of Malphite, or play a few games, I should say, of Malphite, because I feel like Malphite is a little bit underrated at the moment. I think I might have underrated him myself. Malphite is a champion that is really, really strong during team fights with the Unstoppable Force, the ultimate. During laning phase as well, you can just play very passive because you are a tank. You just go Iceborne, not Iceborne Gauntlet, sorry, Sunfire Cape, first item. You go into Iceborne Gauntlet and you just build full tank. You just build as much tank as possible, and then then you just use your Unstoppable Force during the team fights. You then knock up everyone, and then you're just a big, massive frontline tank. That's really where Malphite can shine. You can play Malphite full AP if you want to. Wouldn't really recommend it. I think full tank Malphite is the best way to go. Akali. Again, Akali is a champion that can struggle a lot during the laning phase. You have to be very, very careful with Akali because she is very, very squishy. But as a champion, she is still really strong. She has invisibility from her second ability. She has multiple ways of dashing onto the backline and executing them with her ultimate as well. She does a lot of damage. She has a lot of healing. Obviously, Conqueror helps her with that as well. But yeah, the only struggle with her is laning phase. You know, against these bruisers in the Baron lane, she kind of struggle a lot because she's, you know, you're walking up, you're using your first ability, which to be fair, you can only use a couple of times and your energy is going to run out. And then you're just going to get out traded every time against anyone pretty much in the Baron lane, especially against all the bruisers. Moving on down, we have a Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo is, I don't know, all these champions here basically have no dashes. You know what's funny? I mean, it's true, but basically all these champions have no dashes. Which is kind of, I mean, they're all kind of late game scaling as well. You know, Dr. Mundo is, you know, is okay. Dr. Mundo does well against a lot of AP damage, but Dr. Mundo at the moment is not that strong because AP damage is not really that important or that big at the moment or really that strong. If an AP meta comes around where we see a lot of AP damage, Dr. Mundo might come back into the meta because of that. But again, at the moment, you see all the champions in S+ tier and S tier. There's only one AP champion there out of all of them. And Dr. Mundo can struggle a little bit against the bruisers. You know, he does well against AP damage because he has a lot of healing, and obviously AP champions do a lot of burst damage and not consistent damage. But Dr. Mundo struggles against that consistent damage from bruisers because sometimes the bruisers can out heal or out sustain Dr. Mundo, especially with Divine Sunder and Grasp Beyond Dying being really strong at the moment. Same with Nasus as well. Nasus, you just need to farm in laning phase, but he's so weak during laning phase at the moment because you just need to stack up your first ability as much as possible and just try your best to try and get as many stacks, try and freeze the lane, and then maybe when it comes to team fights, you'll be fairly strong. But at the moment, he's really weak. He can get really harassed during the laning phase, and it is quite difficult as well to get the stacks, especially if you're getting zoned out from minions. Sometimes you just have to use your third ability. But I mean, once Nasus does get stacks, once he does scale into mid and late game, he can be very strong. But it's just trying to get them stacks in the early game and trying to accelerate the stacks as quick as possible, because the longer the game goes, the harder it gets to play against Nasus. But to be fair, you can kind of tower dive Nasus and you can basically kill Nasus before he gets to that point. Pantheon is okay. I think he just gets out traded, I think, against pretty much everyone in the Baron lane at the moment. he could jump in, he could do a lot of damage. You can use your ultimate to roam around the map as well, which means that you can kind of split push most of the time. But I don't think Pantheon's that good at all. I think Pantheon is a champion that struggles a little bit. You could do a lot of burst damage with your second ability and with your first ability on top of that as well. But yeah, I don't think there's much to say about Pantheon. It's just a bit of an off champion at the moment. I think a few changes need to be done to Pantheon. B tier, there's a few champions as well. I've moved Singed down to B tier just because Singed is just, I don't know. I don't really like Singed in Baron lane at all. When you're against these bruisers in the Baron lane, it's really, really difficult. If you're against mages in the top lane, then fine, you can go for Singe. It's not that bad. That's why Singe mid lane is really good, because you're against the mages and you can just walk up, you can clear them in your wave, then you can look to roam around the map, which is also why Singe is very good in mid lane, because you can decide where to roam. But in the Baron lane, you can't really roam in the Baron lane. You just have to stay in the lane and try and kill your opponent. But Singe can't really do that. Singe is really good at roaming, getting proto belt, pushing lane, and then trying to get an impact on the rest of the map. You can't really do that in Baron lane, which is why Singe is all the way down the B tier. KO as well is a champion that probably is the weakest champion in the laning phase. Can't really do too much. Is in melee form until level 6 as well. So, I mean, every time you walk up into melee range as a KO, you're just going to get killed by everyone above you. You know, Pantheon jumps in, Hadnasus can just slap you, Riven as well. You know, all these champions above in A to S plus tier can just kill KO in the early game. And then you're kind of screwed with KO because you take forever to scale. KO's only really a champion when you reach level 10, and that's even a push. Probably level 15 is when KO actually becomes a champion. And Tryndamere as well, same thing. Is a champion that doesn't really do too well during laning phase. You have to scale, you have to try and do a lot. But again, not really a champion that's very useful. You can get kited very easily. And Teemo's just Teemo. I think Teemo can be pretty good. To be honest, I probably could move Teemo up, to be fair. I would rather have... Actually, no, that's a push. Actually, no, it's not a push. I think I'd rather have Teemo than KO in my team. I'm actually not kidding. I think I'd rather have a Teemo in my team than KO. Actually, I don't know, because KO can be useful. Teemo is kind of useless. At least KO has an ultimate that kind of makes you invulnerable. Actually, scrap that. I'd rather have a KO in my team, but KO's still useless anyway. Alright, moving on to jungle. Quick sip of the drink. To be honest, there's not really much that's changed with jungle at all. I don't think there's anything at all that's changed with jungle. S plus tier has pretty much stayed the exact same. Shyvana, even after the nerfs, is still really strong. She can still clear the jungle very quickly. She still gets the stacks on her passive, and once she gets to 400 stacks, she basically becomes unkillable. Again, Shyvana is a champion that can't really do too much in terms of ganking, but you just need to farm up as much as possible, get your passive stacks, go into fights that you need to go into, but most of the time you just want to farm up. But like I said, once you get a few items, Trinity Force, Blade Rune King, Death Stance, them 3 items, plus, I mean, even 300 stacks. Once you get your third ability evolved, you're really, really strong. Wukong, as I've already mentioned in the Baron lane, but it's the same thing with jungle as well. Junglers love to team fight. Junglers love to, group around objectives, especially Baron, and Wukong loves that. Wukong loves to group. He loves to jump onto the backline, knock up multiple enemy champions, and he still does really well in the jungle, even though they've nerfed Wukong jungle quite a bit. Lee Sin as a jungler, really aggressive during the laning phase. You want to try and use the advantage of Lee Sin being very strong and doing a lot of damage during the laning phase to your advantage. You kind of get outscaled by most champions in the jungle with Lee Sin. However, you can still make plays. You can still get that vital kick onto a backline carry, and then you can use that to, win the team fight, basically. But like I said, Lee Sin's main power is during the early game. You have to use that to your advantage. You have to try and gank early. You have to try and trade against enemy junglers, because enemy junglers hate Lee Sin, because Lee Sin does so much damage, has a lot of attack speed. So yeah, you have to be careful with Lee Sin in the early game. Kha'Zix is still strong as well, even after the 10% little nerf that happened to him in isolation damage. He's still really strong. He still does a lot of damage. He still farms up really well. It still scales really well, especially when you get your 3 evolves: first ability, second ability, and third ability evolves. That's really where Kha'Zix can come online. He's not really an engage source of any kind. He's more to stay in the back line, jump in, and execute enemies during, when they're low on health. Jump in, kill an enemy, jump away, jump in, kill an enemy again, or even, jump in, kill an enemy, and then jump in, kill another enemy. That's where Kha'Zix shines, is being able to not not be at the team fight, but clean up at the team fight afterwards, which is where Kha'Zix shines. He's really, really strong. Olaf I spoke about a little bit. I don't think he's as strong in the Baron lane, but in the jungle, Olaf is great. Olaf is so good. He clears the jungle very, very quickly. You know, you can pair Olaf with like Lulu if you want to, with Yuumi as well. He becomes unkillable. You can just farm as much as you can during the early game, get your first item before that dragon, and then use your ultimate to get to team fights and be really, really strong. I think that's really why Olaf is quite good in the jungle, because you can just farm up. You don't have to worry about anyone maybe invading you. Maybe they can look to invade you. Most of the time they don't. And yeah, Olaf is still, you know, really, really good. You can become unstoppable, do a lot of healing, do a lot of damage, and do quite a lot. So yeah, Olaf is still pretty good. A lot of champions in S tier, and the reason for that is because I think jungle's in a pretty good role as well. I think are some junglers that are very, very strong at the moment, you know, like the ones in S+, but the ones in S tier are still really strong. And one champion I've put in the S tier is Nautilus Jungle. I will be bringing out a video of Nautilus Jungle tomorrow, but Nautilus Jungle is surprisingly very, very good. You know, a lot of crowd control, a lot of CC. You clear the jungle very, very quickly as well. What you do is you max your second ability, which does AoE damage on your auto attacks. So not only is Nautilus doing AoE damage normally on the auto attacks because of how Wild Rift works, but you're also doing a lot of damage and, you know, getting a lot of shield from your second ability, which means he's going to stay super healthy. He's going to be dealing a lot of damage in the jungle, and he clears the jungle very fast. And when Nautilus comes up to gank a lane, you use your ultimate, chain CC, and that's a dead champion. You know, he's really great during team fights as well. Aftershock is great because he gets a lot of tanky stats. Sunfire, Iceborne Gauntlet, Thornmail, great items. Really, really good. Definitely give him a try. All right, moving on back through. So Irelia, champion that, you know, you can play in the jungle. I wouldn't really recommend playing Irelia in the jungle, but she is very strong in the jungle. Again, you can maybe use her to play in the jungle to kind of practice how she works, because you have to get resets on your first ability a lot to be able to make an impact in the game. But yeah, Irelia still clears the jungle very quickly, still sustains really well, still does quite a lot, and she is still really strong. Vi as well, you have lockdown with your ultimate. Kraken Slayer is very strong with Vi as well, because you can do a lot of true damage. You can get a reset as well with your I believe that, I'm not mistaken, third ability works with Kraken Slayer. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I remember checking this, and third ability did work with Kraken Slayer, which is why Vi is quite good. Surprisingly, Vi does a lot of damage, and also Vi does quite a lot when you jump in as well with your ultimate. You know, you can lock down one enemy champion, the rest of the team can follow up afterwards, and that's why Vi is really strong. You know, if you're against like a Vayne in the backline, you know, you're against a Jinx, you can just use Vi to basically lock that champion down, and the rest of the team can follow up afterwards. Xin Zhao's still really good, great engage, great disengage, really strong champion as well, has a lot of healing, especially with how strong Divine Asunder and Black Cleaver are at the moment. Clears the jungle very quickly, it's great during team fights. You can kind of isolate one champion as well with his ultimate. You can look to like dive in on the enemy carry, use your ultimate, which knocks everyone else away, which means you're basically alone against the AD carry. Yes, you don't really knock them that far, but it means that Xin Zhao has a little bit of time with that carry to try and kill them. So Xin Zhao, very, very good. Morgana, the fastest jungle clear in the entire game at the moment. She is quite difficult to play, and you do need to practice her in the jungle because you need to make sure you do 2 camps at the same time. So that's Raptors and Red Buff at the same time, and that's I can't remember the name of it. Krug, and no, it's not Krug. What am I talking about? I can't remember the name. Blue Buff and the one next to it. I can't remember the one next to it. But basically, you could do both camps at the same time. If you're against Morgana, I highly recommend you try and invade and you try and stop her from clearing and doing 2 camps at the same time, because she can get quite low. Yeah, clearing jungle, very, very easy with Morgana. Very, very good, and definitely recommend to give her a try. Riven as well, I already spoke about a lot of mobility, and that mobility carries on into the jungle as well. You can clear the jungle very quickly. You have a shielding with your third ability, which means you can sustain quite a lot and stay healthy in the jungle. Yeah, a lot of mobility, a lot of good jungle clear, and again, great during team fights as well. You can look for the flanks, like I already said, during the Baron lane. Camille I already mentioned as well. Again, the lockdown in the ganks, which is kind of the same as Nautilus, and lockdown with the ultimate with Camille is really, really good. Same with Nautilus as well, with how strong he is with locking down in ganking. Same with Camille as well. A lot of mobility, Easily been able to clear through the jungle as well. Still really, really strong champion in the jungle. Graves in the jungle, again, you know, Graves is a champion that, you know, I think Graves is, you know, is still pretty good. I think in the jungle he is very, very good as well, because he clears the jungle very, very quickly, especially with his first ability. You can just clear through the jungle, look to try and trade against enemy champions, especially during like early scuttle crabs, because you can do a lot of damage, especially with Conqueror and the healing from Conqueror. And then once you get like Black Cleaver, Bloodthirster, Storm Rage, you know, these items, then your crits do a lot of damage, and you also heal quite a lot with Conqueror. But yeah, Graves still insanely strong in the jungle, clears the jungle very quickly. Maybe not that impactful during team fights. You have to be quite careful during team fights, but yeah, he's still really, really strong. Echo, still a champion that is very good in the jungle, even after the nerfs of what happened to him. I think it was a couple of patches ago now. Yeah, Echo really, really good in the jungle. The main thing about Echo is that you want to scale into mid and late game. You want to wait until you get about 2 or 3 items before you start looking for team fights. Yes, you don't want to give objectives for free. You want to kind of try and trade objectives in the early game. So, you know, if the enemy team's going for Dragon, just go for Rift Herald. Again, Echo is not that strong once he reaches, you know, once he reaches level 5. He's really strong once he gets 2 or 3 items, you know, Death Cap, Lichbane, Infinity Or. Once you get 3 items, that's when you can start looking to the team fight. Try and jump in on the enemy carries and try and one-shot them, and you can use your ultimate to get away to safety. But early game, Echo's not that strong, so most of the time you just want to farm up as much as possible. Evelyn is still really good because invisibility is still really strong. Not a lot of players go for control wars, which is what makes Evelyn kind of weak in a way, is that you can see where Evelyn is on the map. But Evelyn, as long as you full clear the jungle, get level 5, then you can use that to roam around the map. You can use it to, you know, easily gank lanes as well, because again, control wards are not being used, which means that Evelyn can just basically go around the map with ease with her invisibility. She is quite difficult to play at times. She is on my next A to Z guide as well, so I definitely have to pick her up and give her a try. Yeah, she's still quite fun to play. She clears the jungle quite quickly as well, because of her second ability. Just make sure with your second ability you wait until the charm kind of fully stacks in a way, or fully goes in a cycle, so you get the extra damage on top of that. But yeah, clears the jungle very quickly, has invisibility, can do a lot of damage, and that's really why she is strong. Fiora as well, again, kind of same with Riven and Camille. They're mainly Baron lane champions, but they can still work in a jungle, just because how jungle works in Wild Rift. Very easy to clear the jungle. You have AoE damage on your auto attacks, which means you can, you know, again, clear the jungle very quickly. And then once you clear the jungle, once you get the scuttle crabs, once you get a few items, you're basically, you know, in team fight now. Which is what kind of crazy thing, you know, it wouldn't really work on PC League of Legends, for example. You know, Fiora, Riven, Camille jungle wouldn't really work too much in PC League, but in Wild Rift it works because of that reason. Rengar is okay as a champion that, you know, can do a lot of damage with his ultimate. You can do quite a lot. You can use your ultimate, jump in on the enemy backline, do a lot of damage with his ultimate, try and one-shot enemy carries. But if you can't one-shot enemy carries, that's really where Rengar is going to get very, very weak. You know, when you use your ultimate, you need to make sure with Rengar you try and kill someone. If you can't kill someone with your ultimate, then you're not really that useful. I'll be totally honest with you. That's kind of why Rengar is down in A+ tier. And also his build is a bit weird as well. Like, some people building crit Rengar, some people building lethality, so I'm not really too sure what the build is for Rengar. Pantheon as well. Pantheon is probably better in the jungle, I would say, than Baron lane. I think Pantheon can use his ultimate a lot more and can use his stun a lot more with his, you know, first ability. He can use his ultimate as well when he's clearing through the jungle to try and gank lanes or to try and counter gank as well. I think that's really where Pantheon can shine in the jungle, is that every single time you gank, if you're against a Pantheon jungle, you have to be worried about that Pantheon ultimate, because you don't know where Pantheon is unless you're keeping an eye on him in the jungle, unless you have vision on him. But Pantheon can always gank a lane from so far away, and that's really where Pantheon can shine in the jungle. But again, as a champion, he's just not as strong at the moment. Once you use all your abilities, you're kind of a sitting duck, basically. Gragas as well, I could probably move him up into S tier. I'm not really too sure. Gragas jungle is still really strong. Especially because the AP ratio buffs on the second ability and third ability makes his jungle clear a lot quicker now. Well, not a lot quicker, but it does make it quicker. And then in jungle Gragas, you basically go for full AP. You go full AP, Luna's Echo, and your task is to try and one-shot an enemy carry. That's basically what you do in jungle. But Gragas still really good at jungle, does a lot of damage, clears the jungle very quickly, and is really good during team fights. Again, as I explained in barrel lane, one explosive cast is a difference. You know, one explosive cast can win or lose you a game. Nunu is a champion that can gank quite a lot during the early game, and you probably want to gank quite a lot as Nunu during the early game, especially with his snowball. But at the same time, you also want to farm quite a lot. Nunu's great at securing objectives with his first ability. You can use your first ability, which deals true damage, plus your smite to pretty much secure every single objective. It's very hard to outsmite Nunu unless he completely misplays. Yeah, Nunu, that's the great thing about Nunu. He can secure objectives, can be a frontline tank, and is great for zoning as well. His ultimate is a great zoning tool. If you stand in between your team and the enemy team, you can use the ultimate as a zoning tool, which means the rest of your team can push up and try and do a lot of damage, especially the ranged champions, you know, on the back line. Because if you're against them, Nunu, it's really hard to kind of go past Nunu to try and get into the enemy backline, because the ultimate slows for quite a lot. And also it does a lot of damage, so you have to be careful. Jarvan, again, is a champion that can gank a lot in the early game. His flag and drag, the first ability and the second ability, that combo is very, very strong during the early game. You know, you can look for early ganks, you can look for like early level 2 cheese ganks if you want to as well, with Jarvan, which means you're not going to be able to farm that much. But that's kind of really where Jarvan shines. His ultimate is very good as well, but you have to be careful when picking Jarvan, because if you're against champions that have dashes, say like Lee Sin, for example, trying to think of other champions, Caitlyn can escape the ulti, Ezreal can escape the ulti, there's a lot of champions, Trendemir can escape the ulti. You have to be careful when picking Jarvan, because if you're against champions that can escape the ulti, you're not going to be as strong, and you're not going to be as impactful, especially during team fights. But he's still a champion that does a lot of damage. He's still a champion that's very, very strong. Jax obviously got that big massive nerf to jungle, where he doesn't gain attack speed anymore. Yes, jungle Jax can still work, and you can still just AFK farm, get to mid and late game, and that's really where Jax is very strong. But it can be quite difficult, because you're not going to be strong during the first objectives. You're probably not going to jungle clear as quickly as other champions, and it is quite difficult. I think it kind of killed Jax in the jungle, but it can still work. You know, you can still play it. Trendemir, same as Baron Lane, really. Trendemir jungle probably works better than Baron Lane, just because you can AFK farm the jungle, kind of like Jax in a way. But Trendemir got a nerf to jungle Trendemir quite a while ago, where you don't gain, I think it's extra stacks, or you don't get extra crit or something against jungle camps, which means that it takes quite a long time now to for Trendemir to clear the jungle. But again, he's a champion that does really well in the mid and late games. You just need to AFK farm. He's not going to really get put under pressure, because there's no invading a Wild Rift, which is why he can be very strong. And I moved a few champions up a tier. Rammus and Amumu, I've moved up into A tier. So everyone in the comments that was like, oh, why is Rammus and Amumu B tier? They're still really good. Yes, you know, they're okay. They're not as strong as, you know, the A+ tier, the S tier, the S+ tier. They're far from it. You know, I think the other champions are much more impactful than Rammus and Amumu. Rammus I've been seeing a lot more though. I've been playing with the rank 1 Rammus guy, Why So Salty, and I can see where Rammus jungle, you know, can be really, really strong. But at the same time, I've seen why Rammus jungle is also very bad at the same time. You know, if you have like anyone that you can easily not back Rammus. Yes, his taunt is very strong. Yes, he's super tanky. Yes, he can easily get access to the backline, which is why I've moved him up a tier, and he can work, but he's very difficult for a carry role, I guess you can say, in a way. Same with Amumu as well. Again, I see why he can be strong. I don't think Amumu is as strong as Rammus. I'd rather have a Rammus than an Amumu in my team. But again, his ultimate can be very good. You can build him for AP, or you can build him tank. Both work completely fine. Master Yi is just Master Yi. There was a time when Master Yi was very strong, where he got some changes, but then he got nerfed again. And now I don't think he's as strong anymore. Yeah, Master Yi is just Master Yi again, unfortunately. There was a time when Master Yi was broken, and there was times where Master Yi was very fun to play. Now he's not that fun. And Dr. Mundo jungle, don't play it. It can work. You can work well with it. I've been seeing a few people play Dr. Mundo jungle, but it's not very good. Dr. Mundo, when he got the rework, meant that he's more of a Baron Lane champion than a jungle champion now, and he doesn't really work. On to mid lane. My god, we're at 40 minutes already. I talk way too much about these champions sometimes. All right, on to mid lane. Again, not really much has changed with the mid lane at all. from what I can see. I need to move this actually down a little bit so you can see the Seraphine and the KO at the bottom. But again, not really much has changed with mid lane. Mid lane has pretty much stayed the exact same. I think a few champions have moved here and there, but other, like, most of the champions have stayed the same. Ahri, still insanely strong, has a lot of mobility during the laning phase, is still really, really good. You know, your charm is very impactful. Your ultimate resets as well, allows you to be super mobile. You have a lot of healing and a lot of damage, and she's really, really strong. Diana as well, great during team fights. Conqueror also works really well for her. She can struggle a little bit during the lane phase because she is a melee champion, but she can jump. She can jump on top of enemy champions. Her ultimate is really impactful, and I think she is still a really, really strong champion. You know, her damage numbers is absolutely crazy, especially with Conqueror now, getting her to deal more damage. Caston, even after nerfs, I still think he's very strong. You can run Electrocute, you can also run Fleet Footwork if you want to, but Caston is still insanely strong. You know, laning phase is a little bit of a struggle with Caston, you know, because of the nerfs to the base health. But as long as you play passive, as long as you get a few items, you know, Rod of Ages, Seraph's Embrace, you get that fully stacked, late game Caston is unkillable and does a stupid amount of damage. Karma. I moved her down to S tier, but I moved her back up into S plus tier. Karma is a champion that is just disgusting. You know, this champion does way too much damage. I mean, even support Karma as well. You can just build Luna's Echo, and that's all you need with Karma. She does a stupid amount of damage. She has so much shielding. She has so much utility as well. So much stuns. The champion's just broken. I mean, there was a time where I was like, okay, maybe Karma is not as strong as maybe what she is, but the champion's broken. She's S plus tier for sure, and no one can change my mind about that. Even though, you know, her early game, she might not be able to wave clear as much. Doesn't matter. All you need is one item with her, and she's absolutely disgusting. Moving on to S tier, I spoke about quite a bit already. Not really much else to say with her. You know, she does very well in the mid lane, especially against champions that are not very strong during the early game. You know, likes of Kassadin, Katarina, Ziggs as well. You know, these mages is where Irelia can really shine because she can try and jump on top of them, stack the passive, use the stun as well, and she can be really, really good. But yeah, you just have to be very careful that you dive a little bit too far. But yeah, she's very, very strong. Very, very good champion to play in the mid lane. Katarina, she can get one reset. She can basically kill everyone on the entire map. I don't think she's S plus tier. Some people would put her in S plus tier. I think that there are ways to counter Katarina, and there are easy ways to counter Katarina, especially with Nautilus in the game right now. As soon as Katarina uses her ultimate, you just use Nautilus ultimate. You know, if the enemy team has any source of CC at all, it's very difficult to time your Katarina ultimate to make sure you deal enough damage and make sure you get the resets. So that's why I haven't put Katarina S plus tier, but she's still a very good champion to play. Zed is still very strong as well, can basically delete someone with his ultimate. Very, very good. Electrocute is very good. Also, Conqueror is very, very good on him. Both of them are very, very good. He can kill one champion really easily with his ultimate. He's very mobile. He can play safe during the lane phase as well. He's a very good champion overall. Ziggs is a mage with Orianna. Ziggs and mage, I can cover them both at the same time. Both of them are long range mages. Both of them are very, very good. They just sit back, they farm during lane phase, and then you can scale really easily into mid and late game, and that's really where they shine. You know, Ziggs always does the most damage in the entire game. Doesn't matter if you're behind. And Orianna has the shockwave, which is really impactful. And you know, you have shielding, you have movement speed. She's a great utility champion. Ziggs more so to do with the damage and how you can just sit back and throw your abilities. More Orianna, she does a lot of damage, but more for her utility as well. But both the champions are very, very strong. Galio in mid lane as well does a lot of damage. If you want to go electrocute, you can use aftershock as well, but Galio mid lane is very strong. He does a lot of burst damage if he can get catch up champions with taunt, and he can, you know, be quite impactful during team fights as well because of his ultimate and because of his AoE damage, his AoE taunt as well. And honestly, he's really, really strong. Twisted Fate, look to roam around the map with his ultimate, use his gold card where you can. He doesn't really do the most in terms of damage. He's more of a utility mid laner with his gold card. You can get the long range gold cards with rapid fire cannon and everything. Sorry, it's getting hot in my room, so I need to turn my fan. Hopefully you don't hear my fan. You might be able to hear my fan a little bit. But if you do, I apologize, but it's getting a bit hot. But yeah, Twisted Fate more to do with his utility, with his gold card, with his long range gold cards as well. Making sure that you can just go into you know, the back line or try and catch out an enemy off guard, that's really where Twisted Fate shines, is roaming around the map. Yasuo mid lane. Yasuo is just Yasuo. You can go 0-10, you can go 10-0, complete coin flip sometimes. But Yasuo as a champion is still very, very strong. You know, if you know how to play Yasuo, if you don't go 0-10, then he could be very, very good. You know, he has a lot of dashes. You know, if you have other knockups on your team, that's really where Yasuo can be really, really broken. You know, if you have like an Alistar or a Malphite or a Nautilus or a Vi, anyone that has knockups, you can just use your ultimate afterwards, which means you're going to have all your abilities available. You don't need to stack your first ability at all, and you're just going to be able to deal a lot of damage with Yasuo. But even if you don't have any knockups on your team, you can still be really, really good, and you still can be really strong. Lucian mid lane as well. I've been trying out a bit of a new build with Lucian, like this Manamune Black Cleaver, you know, the build that they do in China. I don't think it's as strong as the crit build, but you can still go this build in mid lane. You can still go for crit Lucian in the mid lane as well. Lucian as a champion is very, very strong, even after the nerfs to the first ability. Didn't really do too much. Yes, he can't use his first ability that much during the laning phase, but after level 6, it's exactly the same. Lucian is the exact same champion, and nothing's changed in terms of cooldowns. So really, really good with Kraken Slayer. Really, really good champion. Can basically just outtrade anyone during the laning phase. But you do have to be careful, because if you get jumped on by like an Irelia, for example, even though Lucian does quite well versus Irelia, or if you get dealt quite a lot of poke damage, then it can be quite difficult. But Lucian, you can just use your first ability to poke in lane, use Kraken Slayer to outtrade your opponents, and yeah, he's really, really good. Gragas mid lane as well, I've already spoken about him quite a lot, but 4 AP Gragas mid lane is very good. The buffs as well also made him insanely strong. He's very, very good during the mid lane. I really like Gragas mid lane. I think he's very, very good. He does a lot of damage. You can try and kill the enemy champions in the laning phase now, especially with the buffs to the second ability and the third ability. But again, Gragas really shines during the ultimate, with his ultimate during team fights. Veigar as well. Veigar's more of a scaling champion that can't really do too much in the early game, but his third ability is very, very strong. It's a very strong zoning tool. It's very good at catching out enemies as well. You can, if you use your third ability to your advantage, then you can win a team fight very, very easily. Veigar doesn't do that much damage during the early game and can get bullied quite a lot during the early game as well. But you know, where Veigar shines is when he gets enough stacks on his passive, when he gets a few items, you know, Luden's Death Cap, Void Staff, Infinity Orb, you know, items like that, then that's where he can one-shot basically anyone on the enemy team, especially with the Giant Slayer buffs as well. Now you go Giant Slayer on most of these AP mages in mid lane, and you're going to deal more damage to tanks, which is normally what mages struggle against, is against tanks. So Giant Slayer just makes it stronger. Akali spoke about a little bit already, but again, Akali is a champion that struggles during the laning phase, but Akali is an assassin that does so much damage. You know, you can easily jump onto the back line with Akali. She is quite difficult to play, but she has so much mobility. She has so many ways to access the back line. You know, her ultimate, then she can turn invisible. She can use the second part of her ultimate to execute. Absolute disgusting champion. One of the most annoying champions to deal with, I think, in Wild Rift. But again, during the laning phase is kind of where Akali is weak, because of the nerf that happened a long, long time ago now to like her base health, her damage, and her energy stacks. But yeah, once she gets to middle lane game, insanely strong. Akshan is very, very good right now in the mid lane, you know, especially with Kraken Slayer. Akshan's another one of the annoying champions with Akali. You know, once he gets one kill, if like someone on the enemy team kills all 5 of your allies, all you have to do is get one kill with Akshan and boom, all of them come back alive. He is an AD carry, so you do have to be careful. You know, you can use that to your advantage. The same with Lucian as well. Both these champions are ranged. Both these champions do a lot of damage, and both of them can use the lane phase to their advantage to poke down enemy champions and to outtrade enemy champions as well. So make sure you bear that in mind. Yeah, Akshan is still very good. You can get caught a little bit with Akshan as well. Again, he is very, very squishy, so he can get caught. If you can use your third ability resets to your advantage, he becomes insanely strong champion. And he also does a lot of damage. Jace, I already explained in Baron lane, but Jason mid lane, again, is kind of the same with Baron lane. I don't think he is as strong as before with Hullbreaker. But he still does a lot of damage. He still does a lot of poke damage. He does very well in the mid lane against bruisers. If you are against bruisers in the mid lane, you know, like Irelia, for example, he does pretty decently against mages because he is a ranged champion at the end of the day. Yes, you can go into melee form if you want to, but most of the time you want to play range form, which is why Hullbreaker is not that strong, because you don't get the full resistances from using Jace in range form. So that's Jace. Corki as well. Corki is still pretty good. Corki is still a champion that is very, very strong in the mid lane. The only problem with Corki is kind of his package timers now, because the dragon is delayed for 5 minutes. That's why you're not really seeing Corki as much, but Corki as a champion still does a lot of damage. Conqueror doesn't really benefit him anymore either. You know, there's a couple of ways that Corki is kind of falling out of the meta. You know, dragon timers, which means his package is not available anymore at his package is still available at 4 minutes, but it's not in time for the dragon, unfortunately. I mean, it's not in time for the dragon, so most of the time you have to delay your package in a way, unless you want to use your package to try and get an advantage elsewhere. Conqueror nerfed, hit him pretty hard as well. And there's a couple other things as well. You know, his build is also kind of weird in a way. But yeah, I still think he's a champion that's still very strong, and I still think he can make a big impact. Fizz as well is a champion that does so much damage. I think with the Zhonya's nerf, Fizz and Zed definitely got stronger, because that was kind of the main counter to these assassins, is Zhonya's. But now Zhonya's stasis is 1,000 gold. It's a lot of money to invest. A lot of money to invest, which means that Fizz and Zed can look to roam around the map as assassins and try and kill enemy champions. You know, Fizz can do a lot of damage, so keep your eyes out on Fizz. Singed, as I mentioned before, in the Baron lane is a lot better in the mid lane, because you can roam around the map more. He's very good against mages, because you can basically walk up, clear the wave. You don't have to worry about the mages you know, dealing that much damage in a way. You just push the lane, and then the mages are stuck under tower, and then you can look to roam around the map with your jungler with Protobelt, which is why Singed is so strong. Echo mid lane is still very strong as well. Most of the time you want to run fleet footwork, you can run electrocute, but Echo during the laning phase, you know, you can sit back, you can try and jump in to try and do some damage to enemy champions. You use your first ability to clear waves, you scale into mid and late game, and that's really where Echo can shine once he gets a few items. So really strong champion. Kennen as well, I already explained the Baron lane. Kennen's definitely rised in popularity, especially because of like Conqueror nurse and everything like that. Electrocute is very strong at the moment as well. So yeah, you can use that to your advantage. You can use Kennen being ranged to your advantage as well, because if you're against like melee assassins during the laning phase, you can just use your range to zone champions away from minions, which is what can make Kennen very strong. And then obviously during team fights, Kennen is insanely strong. Aurelion Sol is a weird one. I don't think Aurelion Sol is that strong at all right now. I think he's very weak. Yes, you can roam around the map and you can make an impact, but the problem is that the third ability of Aurelion Sol is on such long cooldowns. There's only, you know, there's only ways that you can really get to, you know, other lanes. It's like, I think it's like a 40-second cooldown, which is way too long. You know, it means that you can roam once, and if that roam you don't get a kill, then you lose so much farm in mid lane, and you can't roam back to the mid lane that quickly, and then you have to wait another 40 seconds to try and roam around the map. You know, I'd much rather have a TF ulti that probably is on a shorter cooldown than Aurelion Sol's third ability. I think that's what kind of makes Aurelion Sol quite weak right now. Lux mid lane can work, and Lux has risen up in popularity. However, I do think Lux mid lane is her worst role, because she can get dove on quite easily by assassins. She can get out traded in the mid lane as well quite easily. But Lux is a champion, and like I said, has risen in popularity, is very strong, can one-shot a lot of enemy carries very easily, and also the buff to her second ability also made her a little bit tanky, but you have to make sure you time it very well. But again, it's a champion that doesn't have a lot of mobility, so you know, it's quite difficult at times to play during the mid lane, sorry. But you can just use your long range abilities to push the lane, and then maybe look to use your ultimate around the map if you need to. But again, I think Lux dual lane and Lux support is much better. Brand as well in mid lane is like okay. He can easily get out traded during the laning phase. He's really good during team fights. So, you know, if you can get an ultimate to jump multiple times towards enemy champions with your ultimate during a team fight, he does insane amount of damage, especially if you get Elder as well. Like Elder with the damage over time from Brand and also damage over time from Elder, it does a lot of damage, but obviously that's a long time into late game. You know, Brand's very good during the mid to late game, but laning phase he's very weak. And he's a champion that, you know, you basically have one ability, that's your ultimate. If your ultimate can one-shot someone, happy days. If he can't, then Annie's very useless. You have to try and get picks with Annie. You have to try and use Protobelt to try and get into the backline and use your ultimate to stun champions. If you can't do that, and if you're stuck on the backline as Annie, then you're kind of useless. And the problem is that Annie's a very squishy champion. So even though you proto belt forward and you try and catch enemies on the back line, you're probably going to die for it as well when you get one shot. So not a very good champion to play. Morgana mid lane as well is just not really that impactful. You can't really clear waves in mid lane that well until you reach like a few items. You're not really that impactful throughout the rest of the map as well. Yes, you're okay during team fights because you're ultimate, but your ultimate now, you're pretty much not going to have stasis for your ultimate. You need to spend 1,000 gold for stasis with your ultimate, which is kind of what made Morgana very strong, was Morgana with stasis. But now it's kind of not really a thing because stasis is so expensive. Seraphine mid is okay. It's not too bad. You know, you can push lane very easily. You can use your ultimate to great effect as well, but most of the time it's not really that strong. And Kayle is Kayle. Yeah, I already spoke about Kayle. No one is C&D though. I think mid lane is also in a pretty decent spot right now. Kayle is, yeah, Kayle's just Kayle, meaty champion, just gets out traded every single time. Just don't play Kayle. It's as simple as that. Don't play Kayle at all. Right, on to AD carries. A few changes here. Again, a few additions as well to the AD carry role, as you can see. But one thing has not changed, which is Lucian. Lucian is still insanely broken right now. Lucian is still the strongest AD carry to play in the current meta. Yes, he did get nerfed, but as I said before, in the mid lane, Lucian is basically weaker during the laning phase until level 6. And then the cooldown is exactly the same because you always max the first ability. And yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know. This champion is disgusting. It's disgusting how much damage you get deals. And to be honest, the nerf didn't really do too much anyway to Lucian. You know, he still can poke really easily with the first ability. The cooldown was only like 1.5 seconds, so it doesn't really mean too much. In the S tier, all the other AD carries, you know, Jinx is maybe the weakest one out of all of them, but Jinx is a champion that has a lot of range during the laning phase, can do quite a lot of damage, and all Jinx needs is one kill. As soon as Jinx gets one kill or kills an objective like a tower, then she gets her reset with her passive. She can get a lot of movement speed, get a lot of attack speed, especially with lethal tempo, and she does a stupid amount of damage. You know, Jinx paired with Yuumi or Lulu or Janna or Nami, you know, any enchanter at all, Jinx is just insane, and that's why she stayed in S tier for me. Vayne as well is exactly the same as before. You know, Vayne is still very strong. Can struggle a little bit during the laning phase, but as soon as Vayne reaches a few items, she's super mobile. She does a lot of damage. You know, late game Vayne is one of the most difficult champions to deal with, especially if she has an enchanter by her side. So she's still a very strong champion. One of the best champions, one of the best AD carries, I would say, during the late game. Draven, complete opposite. One of the strongest, if not the strongest, early game champions as an AD carry or in the duo lane. He does the most damage out of pretty much anyone because of his first ability and how strong his auto attacks are. But the thing is with Draven is you need to get an advantage during the laning phase. If you don't get an advantage during the laning phase, that means you're going to be very, very weak. You need to get a kills during laning phase. You need to get your passive rolling. You need to get a gold advantage, because when it gets to team fights, Draven can struggle because he needs to make sure he catches axes, but sometimes his axes can be put in a little bit of a difficult spot. And also he's very immobile as well. So yeah, that is Draven. Ezreal is absolutely disgusting right now as well. Ezreal is a champion that I could probably move up into S+ tier. Yes, during the laning phase, Ezreal is not really that strong. He can't really do that much damage, but it's this champion just does so much. You know, once you reach 2 items with Ezreal, Manamune, Trinity Force, it's crazy how far back you can play with Ezreal and just how much damage you can deal. You don't need to go into auto attack range. You just need to stay back, use your first ability to poke, use all your other abilities like your second ability, your ultimate as well. They're on such low cooldowns, they do so much damage, and he's just so difficult to deal with. You know, during the mid and late game, he's so difficult. He has his third ability that he's able to basically flash away. He has like a second flash in a way. So disgusting. Zyra as well, great front to back AD carry, does a lot of damage. Lethal tempo is also very good with her. She does a lot of damage. She is very strong. She's a very good champion to play. Again, more of a front to back AD carry. You have to make sure you keep an eye on your feathers. Make sure you're using your feathers to your advantage. Stack as many feathers as possible. And yeah, Zyra will be very strong. So keep an eye on Zyra. I think the Zyra is definitely rising a bit in popularity. Kai'Sa, one of the shortest range AD carries in the laning phase with Vayne, which makes Kai'Sa quite weak during the laning phase, which means that she's very weak, you know, against the likes of Lucian, Draven in a way, Jinx as well. You know, she's kind of weak overall in the laning phase, but Kai'Sa really comes online once she gets her evolves. Once you get your first ability evolved, you get double BF sword, which happens all the time before first dragon. And then you get your third ability evolved, so that's Storm Razor, IE, and then Runa's Hurricane. That's where Kai'Sa comes online. That's where Kai'Sa can dive in onto the backline with her ultimate, use her visibility to her advantage, use her ultimate shield to her advantage. She does a lot of damage when it comes to the mid and late game, and that's why Kai'Sa is very, very strong. Caitlyn, longest range out of any other AD carry in the game right now, which is what makes Caitlyn very strong. During the laner phase, she's one of the most annoying champions to deal with because she just sits back, she auto attacks you to death, and there's nothing you can do. You know, every other AD carry, there's basically nothing that you can do at all. You just have to sometimes use your abilities against Caitlyn and try and just push the wave as much as possible, because Caitlyn, yeah, she's just super annoying. Really, really good during, you know, team fights as well. You can use your traps as kind of a zoning tool. You have a lot of ways to kite back. You have a lot of ways to do a lot of damage. You know, your traps you can put underneath you and make sure that the enemy champions have to kind of go around your traps in a way. If not, then they're going to be dealt a lot of damage with her passive, her headshot passive. And yeah, she obviously has a execute with her ultimate as well once enemies go low on health. So very, very good champion. A lot of range. Very, very safe to play as well. Varus has risen up in popularity again, especially after the buffs. I do think I need to do a video on Varus to kind of explain the buffs and how Varus has become stronger. I don't think Varus is as strong as Lucian. I think the one problem still with Varus is that he's a very difficult carry champion. He's more of a utility poke champion that uses ultimate and kind of relies on the rest of his team. Yes, you can do a lot of damage with your auto tanks. Yes, you can do a lot of damage with your abilities. However, it's not on the same scale as like a hyper carry. You know, Varus late game is good, but you know, Vayne late game is insane. Kai'Sa late game is insane. Xayah late game is insane. Same with Jinx as well. You know, Varus is more of like kind of like Ezreal in a way. But I think Ezreal still does quite a lot of damage and probably does more damage than Varus. But yeah, Varus is really good because of his ultimate, because he can poke a lot with his first ability. He has anti-heal on his third ability as well. And yeah, he is still really good though. You know, he's definitely risen up again in popularity, so we'll have to definitely give him a try again. And Tristana got a huge buff this patch. Honestly, when I read the patch notes, I was like, this buff's not going to mean too much. Her third ability feels so much better and it feels so much smoother. I don't know what they did. I mean, obviously they reduced the cast time, but my god, her third ability feels so smooth right now. Again, you still have the kind of same problem with Tristana, that she is quite difficult to play. You need to make sure you put the bomb on the right target and you make sure you auto attack that same champion to get a reset on your second ability. But my god, her third ability feels so damn good right now. I love it. I love Tristana. I love playing her. She's very good as well in the mid and late game. Her passive allows her to get one of the longest ranges out of any other AD carry. It's insane. I love Tristana. And that's why I moved her up into S tier. All right, A+ tier. My god, this could be a long video. A+ tier. Lux. I have to talk about this champion first in A+ tier. Lux is disgustingly broken in the dual lane. I don't know what the hell they did to her. I mean, obviously they gave her a shield buff on her second ability, but my god, this champion is disgusting in the dual lane. Like, you know, you use your shield, both you and your ally get some insane shield, which makes you both super tanky. Her lockdown as well in the dual lane. I think the main thing why dual lane Lux is better than mid lane is because at least dual lane, you have someone there to support you. You have a support there, or you have an AD carry there to support Lux. Mid lane, if you miss your abilities, you can get dove on really easy by the mid laner, and the jungler might not be by your side, and that's kind of where Lux is kind of difficult. But in the dual lane, it's 2 against 2. So even if you miss your abilities, you still have another champion there that can help you out. And it's always difficult to try and engage onto a Lux as well, so in the dual lane, because you always have another champion there, because it's always 2 versus 2. Yeah, Lux, insane one-shot potential. I tried dual lane Lux out. I did a video on her a few weeks ago. Last week, I think it was. But yeah, she's insane. She's really strong, really fun to play. Speaking of other AP champions, Ziggs and Orianna are still very strong in the dual lane. Both these champions can just scale really well into mid and late game. You can just push the lane in the dual lane. You don't really have to get put under any pressure at all. And they're both very strong. I think they're both very good. Yes, they're not strong during the early game, but mid and late game is really where Ziggs and Orianna shine. So I think as AP champions, these 3 are definitely the best AP champions right now in the game. Lux, you can go for Summon Area if you want to as well. All right, speaking of other champions, I think all these champions have definitely fallen out the meta. Corki, Ashe, and Jhin. Corki first. Again, I kind of explained it in mid lane. Corki package timer is a bit awkward now because it's 4 minutes and the first dragon doesn't spawn until 5 minutes. And also the Conqueror nerf was pretty bad for him. And I think other champions can just outtrade him during the laning phase. I think his scaling is still pretty good, but then he has a problem with his mana. Like, you either have to go like Mana Immune Corki, or you have to go Essence Reaver first item Corki, which Essence Reaver is not really a strong item, and Mana Immune means that you're going to become basically useless until you get that Mana Immune fully stacked. And yeah, like I said, he just doesn't do as much damage as before because of Conqueror. Ashe, as always, is more of a utility AD carry than a damage AD carry. She has a lot of slows. She has a lot of stuns with her ultimate. She can use her third ability to advantage as well. Again, she doesn't really do that much damage. She does a little bit of damage. You know, she can do quite a lot of damage if she's ahead. But again, more of a utility. More to do with relying on the rest of your team. Kind of the same with Varus in a way. You know, she's not a hyperscale AD carry. Saying that she kind of isn't a hyperscale AD carry in the end. But like her build at the moment is kind of weird. It's like Mana Immune, Trinity Force, you know, items like that. I like to build crit Ashe, even though crit doesn't really benefit her that much, but I think the extra slow is quite nice. And also the crit items are just very strong. It gives you a lot of stats. But yeah, I don't think she's that strong. Jhin is Jhin, basically. Fleet Footwork nerf kind of hit him. Items are not really strong on him. Yeah, the champion just isn't very good. Even after the buffs, the champion's just not good. Giant Slayer helped him out a little bit, deal more damage to tanks, but other than that, Jin's just Jhin. I don't think Jhin is a very strong champion at all right now, which is kind of sad because Jhin is one of my favorite champions. In A, you have the other mages, you know, Seraphine, Morgana, and Karma, which I still think can work, but they're just not as strong as Ziggs, Orianna, and Lux at the moment. They still can work very, very well. You know, Karma is still a very, very strong champion right now, but I think Karma's support is better than Duralane Karma. Morgana is like okay in the Duralane, but doesn't really get played that much anymore. More for trying to help the rest of your team. Again, more of a utility Duralane carry. And kind of same with Seraphine. You know, Seraphine has a lot of wave clear, has a lot of shielding, and also a lot of crowd control, but again, not that strong. And Miss Fortune just sucks. I just have to break it to you, unfortunately. Miss Fortune is just terrible. You know, there's so many ways for everyone to stop Miss Fortune's ultimate. She doesn't do a lot of damage. She's probably the strongest during the laning phase because she can use her double up, her first ability, to poke enemy champions, but she doesn't do a lot of damage at all. And like I said, when it gets to team fights, it's so easy for mages, for assassins, and even AD carries to easily dive on top of Miss Fortune and just kill her very, very easily. Akshan Duralane doesn't work as well as mid lane Akshan because he doesn't have the same 1 versus 1 potential that he's able to dive in with her his third ability, and also Akshan doesn't do very well against crowd control. So yeah, a little bit difficult to play Akshan Duralane, but he's still very strong in mid lane. Brand and Veigar just don't, I mean, you can play them in Duralane, but I just don't think they're as strong. You know, I don't think they can't really push the lane that much. They scale quite well into the mid and late game, but they just don't really do too much in terms of damage or anything. And then Senna is Senna down in the C tier. This is farming Senna. This is not fasting or support Senna. But don't play farming Senna. When you play Senna, you want to play Senna as a support, or you want to play her as fasting, which means that you have a tank by your side and you're just poking down enemy champions. You do not want to farm a Senna. If you farm a Senna, that means that you're not going to get as many souls, which is what kind of makes Senna really strong. And last, but by no means least, we have supports. I don't think anything has changed with support at all. Looking at this, I don't think anything has changed, but we'll quickly go through it anyway. Karma, as I mentioned, Karma is still insane at the moment, still one of the strongest champions. As support Karma, you can just go Luden's Echo first item into like Starflow, Flowing Water, Ardent Censer. You know, insanely strong champion right now. One of the champions that always gets like first picked or banned at the moment in solo queue all the time. Excuse me, especially legendary queue. Yuumi as well. Yuumi's another annoying champion to play against because of how much shielding and how much healing that she has. Yeah, insanely strong right now. Once she gets past the laning phase, you can just jump on a bruiser. Again, more reliant on your team in a way, but you just build Yuumi for AP. If you build Yuumi for AP, her damage is absolutely disgusting. So yeah, this is why these two are S+ tier, and they're both insanely strong. S tier, there are a lot of good champions in a lot of different ways. There's enchanters here that are really strong. There are tanks here that are really strong. There are carry supports here that are really strong as well. Just basically pick your bunch. Pick what sort of playstyle do you want to go for. But yeah, Thresh, great engage, great disengage, has a very, very good kit for solo queue. The Lantern can escape people from safety, even though most of the time people don't actually click the lantern. Make sure you click the Thresh lantern. But yeah, Thresh, insane engage with his hook. His flay is really strong. His ultimate is very, very strong. Yeah, just a very good champion overall. And I really like playing Thresh. I think Thresh is a very, very cool champion to play, just because of his kit. His kit is very strong. Pyke is super underrated. Pyke is a great carry in support, especially in lower elos, because you have your you know, you have your hook, you have all your damage, you also have resets on your ultimate, and most people don't understand how Pyke works in lower elo. So Pyke is really, really strong, but also he's insanely strong in high elos as well. And the great thing about Pyke is if you get a kill with your ultimate, you also share the gold with the rest of your teams. You're just going to be getting infinite gold with Pyke if you get resets on your ultimate. You know, Pyke is one of them 1v9 carries and support that you can look to roam around. You can look to try and make plays around the map because he can turn invisible as well. Yeah, just really, really fun support to play. Rakan is still really good as well. He has shielding, he has great engage with knockups, he has his ultimate that can charm everyone on the enemy team. You know, Rakan can basically be a make or break. I feel like, you know, Rakan is a champion that has insane engage, has insane potential to basically win an entire team fight. If you can ultimate and charm everyone and then knock up them straight afterwards, it's crazy. It's actually crazy how much Rakan can do. During lane phase, well, he's also very strong. You can also build in full AP, so make sure that you build a little bit more damage as well. You know, electrocute Rakan is very strong at the moment with Rod of Ages, with Death Cap and other items like that. Yeah, just a really, really fun champion to play. Really good champion as well. And also you can escape away to safety with your third ability as well, which is quite cool. Enchanter supports, you know, Lulu is very, very good. Maybe not that impactful as like other enchanters like Nami and Janna. Because Lulu, I mean, she can poke a little bit, but basically most of the time with Lulu, you just stay at the back line. You use your ultimate to give your AD carry health, you give her shields, you give her movement speed, and that's basically it. You know, Lulu is very, very different to other supports, because Lulu, she's not really an engage support in a way, whereas like, you know, Janna, you can kind of use her for engage sometimes with her tornado, same with Nami as well, but Lulu's more of just like a sit back, I have to just buff my AD carry. So sometimes she doesn't really work too well, but she's, you know, her stats are still insanely strong, and she still does so much. Even if your AD carry gets caught, you can still save them with your ultimate. Alistar can go into team fights 1 versus 9 and just carry the team fight basically. He's insanely tanky. He's just very, very weak during the lane phase, especially against all these enchanters that are very strong at the moment. You know, Alistar struggles against Nami, Karma, Yumi sometimes, Janna as well. You know, Alistar is, you have to make sure you time during the laning phase so well, because Alistar, when he dives in and when he uses his abilities, he can't really escape. So if you dive in and you use your headbutt pulverize, you have to make sure that you hit a valuable target, because if you don't, then you're just going to be stuck there and you're going to just be taking a lot of damage. Yes, Alistar is very, very tanky and he has aftershock, but again, during the laning phase, you know, when he's like level 1 for example, he can't really do too much. He's basically like a sitting duck in a way. Nami is a very, very strong support at the moment. I've been playing a lot of Nami in Legend Queue. I honestly nearly put Nami up in S+ tier. That's how strong Nami is right now. She's just insane. She just has it all. She has engage, she has disengage, she has healing, she does a lot of damage, she has a third ability that can buff the AD carry as well. She has everything. I think her ultimate is one of the strongest in the entire game. Also her bubble, her first ability is also insanely strong. I honestly feel like I should put her up in the S+ tier, because she's so strong, and she's, I don't know, she's insane right now. Nautilus is rising up a lot in popularity. Nautilus, after the buffs, was one of the biggest buffs in patch 3.3b, and I think that he was just really good. He's really strong, and now he's gotten even stronger with the buffs that he got. He has a lot of crowd control. I think that's the main thing with Nautilus, is his crowd control. You know, he has so many ways to just isolate a target, use his ultimate, use his first ability, use his auto attack. He can chain CC for so damn fucking long. It's so disgusting. You know, ultimate, hook, auto attack, third ability, slow. Then he's just so tanky at the same time as well. It's just crazy. You know, he's really good during laning phase. He's really good at catching out enchanters off guard, which is what like Pyke, Thresh, and Nautilus do quite well, is they're really good against enchanters, because against enchanters, you want to go for hard engage. You want to go for hard engage. You want to try and kill the enchanters before they can poke you down and be useful, which is why Nautilus is also very good. But yeah, during team fights, he's one of the strongest champions right now. Really, really good. And Janna as well. Janna is still very, very strong. Very good at disengaging. It's still very good during the lane phase. You know, the buff that she got a while ago to her tornado was very, very, very good because she gets extra speed now from her tornado, which means that you can catch enemies off guard very, very quickly with her tornado. Shout out to Bansky, who's a very, very good Janna player. He does insane Janna plays all the time. You know, he hears tornadoes, he walks up, then he uses his third ability and auto attacks. He shields himself to make sure that he doesn't die. Janna is still a very, very strong champion. And underneath S tier are kind of like okay champions. You know, I still think these champions are very, very strong, but I think the other champions above just offer more. Leona is a very, very good tank. The problem is with Leona, I feel like at the moment, is she's very how can I call it? She's very single target focused, I guess, in a way you can say it. She can isolate a champion very, very well. She has long range now on her ultimate and her third ability. Yes, you can try and one-shot an enemy carry, for example. However, once she uses all of her abilities, she doesn't really have anything else to offer. I think that's the problem. So if you miss your ultimate, if you miss your third ability, then you're pretty much useless. You know, kind of like, I guess, Alistar in a way. But the great thing about Alistar is that his cooldowns are very, very low. And also his ultimate makes him super tanky. And the great thing is when you use your third ability with Alistar, you can keep chasing to get the stun off afterwards. With Leona, you're just like you're just like a sitting duck, basically. You know, once you use your ultimate, once you use your third ability, if you miss them, or even if you hit them and you hit your first ability afterwards, you're just standing there. You can't really do too much. You're just standing there auto attacking. At least with other champions, you know, like Nautilus, for example, you can walk around and auto attack every individual champion to root them. You can use your third ability for a slow. You got other ways to, you know, help your team. Same with Thresh as well. His cooldowns are very, very low. You can just use your flay as much as possible. Same with other champions. But yeah, Leona very one-dimensional. But I still think she's very strong. You know, if you do catch out an enemy champion with your ultimate and your third ability, you can do a lot of damage. You can basically one-shot that carry. So I still think she's very strong. Galio support, I still think is very strong as well. I think with Aftershock and building tank Galio support, he's very, very good. Again, he's quite difficult to play if you're against champions that have a lot of dashes, because they added that his like second ability basically slows him a lot more now. Even though he got buffed again quite recently, it's still not as strong as before, which is what made him really, really strong. But he's still really good. He still pokes, he still does a lot of damage, and he's really good during team fights as well, especially with his ultimate, because he has the AoE what's the word called? AoE knock-up with his ultimate, and he can zone quite well. So I still think he's fairly good. Brom has just been falling out because Font of Life just keeps getting nerfed and nerfed and nerfed. Brom has been like a champion that has never really received buffs and nerfs. Actually, I don't even know if Brom is the only champion that has never received buffs and nerfs in Wild Rifts. I'm curious, because I'm not too sure. But the problem is that Font of Life keeps on getting nerfed, because champions like Nasus and Gragas and Galio all just use Font of Life, and Font of Life was basically extremely broken on the champions. And then Font of Life basically got nerfed after nerf after nerf, and that basically made Brom weaker. That's the problem. I think Brom at the moment as well, he doesn't really offer too much for the team. He's more of a disengaged support. He's not really that tanky as well. And yeah, that's basically it. Moving on to A tier, we have other enchanters. Pretty much, all enchanters in the A tier. Lux I might move up by one, because Lux is very, very good as well. I think Lux is very, very strong, but I think Lux can definitely move up one. I already explained why Lux is very strong at the moment. Even as support, you can build her 4 AP, and she's insanely strong. Senna as a support is still very good as well. You go for like Black Cleaver, Divine Sunderer. She's still very good. She still does a lot of damage. Again, more of a carry support, but she's still very good. Sona is still really good as well. I think the laning phase is really where Sona struggles. You need to make sure you get Ceres Embrace as soon as possible. You get that fully stacked, which means you're going to be a little bit more tanky, but also it means that you can spam your abilities more often. So I think Sona's very good. Soraka as well, she can be okay. Her silence field is very, very strong. She has a lot of healing as well. Yeah, she's okay. I think she's a pretty good champion. She's like, she's been nerfed a few times now, so obviously she must be really strong. Seraphine as well, kind of same with Duralane, Seraphine, and mid lane Seraphine. She's not that good, but she can make an impact. You know, she has a lot of healing. She has a lot of shielding. Her ultimate is one of the strongest team fight ultimates if you can catch out multiple enemy champions. And then Morgana support's not really that great, to be fair. I can honestly move Morgana support probably down to here. I don't think Morgana support is that great at all. And then Shen and Set are both unique supports that you can try. They're both kind of cool in their own unique way. Shen's support with Aftershock is pretty cool because you can dash in, be a super tank, and block a lot of damage, and you can also just taunt enemy champions very easily. Same with Set as well. You can just walk forward, use your face breaker, use your haymaker, and do a lot of damage, and also be a really, really big tank. And then C tier is Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank, if you miss your hook, you're completely useless, and I just hate Blitzcrank. That's why I put him in C tier. I don't know. I just don't like the champion at all. I don't think like Blitzcrank can really do too much once you use your hook. Yes, you can maybe hook an enemy champion. If you do, then it can be really, really good. But if you miss your hook, my God, you're the most useless champion in the entire game, basically. All right, anyways, that is everything for the tier list. Thank you all for tuning into the tier list. It's a very, very long tier list, an hour and 20 minutes long, but hopefully you all enjoyed it. Take care. Stay tuned for more Wild Rift content, and I'll see you in the next Wild Rift video. Peace.